Advantage 1 is discretion. Sessions repressive criminal justice system results from heavy-handed prosecutors entrusted with a wide range of discretion. This makes reform and grassroots organizing impossible without addressing prosecutorial power. Pendergrass. 526 sessions resurrected mass incarceration, planning approaches likely to maximize prison time stretch. Since extraordinary authority is a power similarly wielded by district attorneys that obtain cases resolved by delivering prosecutor alone determines who to charge or charges bring what please to offer these historian from the public view. Subtract little or no oversight. The ACLU focus power on district attorneys. Reform must be focused on reducing prosecutorial power and plea bargaining. Incentivizes defendants to waive their rights through coercion. Green 13. Prosecutors require defendants to waive their rights for exchange of the lenient plea. Prosecutors' objectives conservative resources are assumed that proceedings ensure waivers reflecting the use of prosecutorial power. Prosecutors require defendants to waive their rights to DNA testing, establishing their innocence. Consent to deportation waiver rights may be extracted in exchange for mere opportunity to be considered for lenient treatment. Prosecutors exploit opportunity to be requiring defendants to wish to be considered for failure plea offer to agree. Prosecutors have transformed legislation into a manner that's cheap, more quick, effective, and criminal defense or sacrifice procedural processes for prosecutors give a rather liberal use of leverage to achieve results. And deconstructing the efficiency mindset that guides plea bargaining is capable of subverting the fundamental unfairness of the entire criminal justice system wheel. 12. As long as plea bargainers used to prison industrial complex will continue to grow, plea bargainers were eliminated, there would be a moving reduction in prosecution. Such would be an important step in ending the current culture of mass confinement. The system in mass incarceration is entirely dependent on the cooperation of those who seek to control that. Everyone who's charged with crime exercise their rights there would not be enough judges or styles to. The entire system is riddled with corruption, and this results in cycles of criminalization and dehumanization and structural violence. Brown and Patterson. 16. 1 in 3 African Americans experience prison. Children of inmates who left small school, women partnered with inmates suffer from depression, economic hardship, being locked away. Scars and makes greater likelihood of smoking premature death. Felony conviction means they never vote again. Incarceration can affect one's ability to secure benefits, get a job. Mass incarceration ultimately hurt our entire nation and independently rights violations that cause rapid totalitarianism and inability to critique power. Vincent 17. Plea bargaining overuse raised concerns about the CJ as a defendant facing threat of significant jail time may be pressured to accept a plea agreement without having any opportunity to review evidence. One plea bargains with some one-sided contract law. Prosecutors punish those that reject plea agreements by stacking additional charges. Prosecutors can target individuals, coerce them to plea, and dropping terms against unfair family members. One plea bargaining does not entail voluntary choice or totalitarian society requiring an inquisitorial legal system which government has absolute discretion to punish everyone. No system of modern America can possibly know all of its legal obligations under the current system. The adversarial legal process is severely undermined. Advantage 2 is legitimacy. Judicial checks on Trump are coming, but assault of the system reaffirms judicial independence and separation of power. Power 17. Though the judicial branch acts as an effective deterrent of the administration, when Trump signed the executive order banning immigrants' legal assistance was deferred within days. The ACLU won injunctions against and bans in federal court. Even important checks on judiciary have seen cracks in the system. Consumers refuse agents who obey the court's attorney generals are also suing to preserve federal programs and reduce harms and emissions. The AAPA movement and community grassroots campaign aimed at encouraging lawmakers to preserve the LCS. The legal system is critical to our democracy, and a ban on plea bargaining would boost overall perception of legitimacy and community participation. Pattis 12. When everything is a crime, what's wrong is forcing cases to trial yields great legitimacy. People are held accountable in the silence, and community plea bargaining always takes place in private. Criminal justice regarded as a moral equivalent of alienating power in the midst. It might be a yield improvement in the forms of fewer prisons, more confinement in the criminal justice system, greater accountability, and the perception of court's decisions are done through backroom deals tanks legitimacy. Bibis 06. A gulf divides knowledge of participants inside the criminal justice and those who are well-informed inside control levels of power to decide which cases to charge and what sentences are appropriate. Insiders have a distinct set of incentives. They have self-interest opposing cases, large close reducing their workload to ensuring conviction. Outsiders have a very different perspective to them. Criminal justice seems opaque and behind closed doors. Information about criminal justice is notorious and inaccurate. Outsiders have few ways of learning the progress. Public most relies on distorted media accounts of cases. Outsiders constantly underestimate average normal sentences, results in ensuring tension between insiders and outsiders. Gap of information and self-interest causes huge diversion. A compromised judicial system allows rampant fascism. Fickle 16. So Trump calls for investigation against political opponents around partisan in American history. Where would stop anyone spoke out would be vulnerable to treatment of individuals or be at the mercy of Trump's system is one key following a revolution. Top 9. So the German Empire failure to serve true independent judiciary is one of the most important steps for any autocracy to gain control of the judicial system. Democracy was destroyed by a coup. It was undermined from within. Insecurity and rule of the law, judiciary checks, adventurism. Calvin 98. In the era of thermonuclear weapons, America must hold up commitment to the rule of law. Strength goes from resolving military force and constitutional authority. Those in the military being held under accountable in the law. The underpinnings of constitutional governments are threatened by those who the rule of law weakens, and military policies are traditions, and a rule of law is maintained. Judiciary must be willing to demand adherence to legal principles. The legal system can provide useful training against dangerous military activity, and judiciary must be rigorously scrutinizing military decisions of our nation if his frame recognizable, and checking Trump is key to preventing existential risk bomb. 16. Trump presidency is a global catastrophic risk. President has sole authority to launch atomic weapons. China primary candidates. Trump has tensions with China without U.S. pressure. Russia could be aggressive. Putin fears loss of power could be more aggressive with military action. U.S. authoritarian government is a devastating force responsible for some of the largest human tragedies. Thus, the plan. The Supreme Court of the United States ought to abolish pre-bargaining in the United States criminal justice system. Palmer 99. Plea bargaining must be abolished as long as negation is permitted. It will continue to deprive a great number of persons from a trial, hide the corruption of public officials, and serve as an escape hatch of affluent vindicators of the law. And NEFO AF to challenge status quo groupthink, heavily discount mega evidence. Sure, 15. The system has become so broken. The principal mission today should be to make it less awful. We have to unearth the tracks as long as they're not gone missing. We must fight and continue to proclaim our commitment to exonerating the innocent. Plea bargaining is driven in the effects of heavy caseloads while simultaneously macerating defenders of constitutional protection. Now, framework rights are a prerequisite to any moral system because they secure the possibility of daily existence. Try direct defensive rights fail and progressive fighting to fix them in obstructive social constructs. Singer 84, it is important to remember that these are real people. We are closing ourselves off from actual life and experiences. Rights focus on particular social consensuses, awaiting what is just what is happening here. Democratic politics encounter people with different interests. Matters of humanity of discourse, common interests is to discover and create democratic political struggles. The theory can create shared values. They will shift our view from viewing individuals as abstract citizens and focusing on purely intent-based frameworks crush our ability to respond to violence. McCluskey 12 out of 10 consequences reinforce racial harm. Powers being able to act without taking into account others. Power is strongest when it operates through structures making its harm appear acceptable. Unintended consequences of firm and resulting harm is unequal effects of policy foreseeable or obvious. Justice requires individual with harmful effects and consequences. Unintended consequences and arguments processes of moral understanding and message. And you should prefer arguments as to actor specificities. The United USFG, they don't have a unified intent, which means that they pass laws for different reasons. They also don't have reflexive capacity, which means they can't value things intrinsically, which means that their ultimate goal has to be promoting the well-being of all citizens. So it's a most-binding obligation. I accepted the last framework.
Okay. Everyone ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do you solve for the first advantage?
Sure. So prosecutors have discretion in multiple ways.
No, I understand what prosecutorial power is and like discretion. How do you solve for that?
Sure. So we don't allow them to bargain and use plea bargaining to coerce defendants into pleading guilty.
Okay, but you say that we need to turn away from this efficiency mindset. How do you do so?
Sure. So we solve the efficiency mindset of the criminal justice system because right now prosecutors will take tons of cases and get through them very quickly because they just need 45 minutes to enact a plea deal. But if they were to go to trial for all of those cases and have to do better screening processes to keep their conviction percentages up, then it would require them to spend much more time on each case, meaning that they couldn't go through as many cases.
Right, so that just places them in a problem in which they have to figure out, like, if you say, like, the system is so messed up that all they care about is efficiency, why are they just going to decide, like, oh, no, we no longer care about efficiency, now we just care about doing justice?
Well, so they also care, so prosecutors care about tough on crime and high conviction percentages, which is why they plea bargain, is because it gets them an automatic conviction. If you take that away from them, they have to spend much more time on each case.
Yeah, I understand they have to spend much more time on that, but how do you, like, empirically, can you point me to a place that when we've banned plea bargaining, that prosecutors have just decided to take fewer cases instead of the courts like rolling back due process rights or so other.
We make several analytical arguments. I can give you evidence that cites Philadelphia as a state in which I will read it in the 1AR.
Okay, that's fine. How do you solve for the second advantage?
Sure, legitimacy. So plea bargaining crushes judicial legitimacy because it is done in backroom deals and results in desperate sentencing.
Sure. Okay, so your first powers card says that...
So Mia, you're just cutting me off. Do you want me to answer your question?
That's enough.
Okay.
Okay, so on the powers card, you say that judicial checks are coming, but then you cite how the judiciary is already checking Trump right now, and we have plea bargaining right now. So why do the judges still have legitimacy?
So we're like hanging on to our last strand right now.
Where does that say that?
Yeah, sure. So we have seen alarming cracks in the system at airports, customs, border patrol agents refusing to obey the court systems when Trump sought to implement narrow travel bans, which indicates that a lot of people are disobeying the law. It's starting to crack and collapse under the system now. The app is key to rectifying that.
Okay, so the system is starting to crack, but it's still like holding Trump accountable, which is what you say is necessary.
No,
you don't talk about like border patrol agents. So you talk about the President of the United States, correct?
In some instances, they've been able to check Trump, but other times it has been cracking enough so that he's able to enforce things like illegal immigration bans, etc.
But those were rolled back, correct?
So the card talks about how they're currently being pursued and how people aren't listening to the judicial. What do you mean how?
You say Trump. It's Trump that we need to hold back, not like border patrol agents.
Yes, customs and border patrol agents have refused to obey court orders issuing a stay on the travel ban. Would seem to indicate that the judicial legitimacy of enforcing the law is currently being subverted.
Okay. 231.
231 left or 231?
231 left.
Okay.
Okay, the doc has been set. The order is 1 off, case 2 off. And when I go on case, I'm gonna read the stuff that's in the file first and then go top down. Is everyone ready?
Yeah.
First is a counter plan. The AF actor ought to establish plea jurors that have power to reject deals that prosecutors bring forth. They deem unfair. They believe the defendant does not fully understand the terms of the plea. NFOC 2015 advocates for Applebaum's proposal. Instead of letting prosecutors and defense attorneys hammer out plea deals behind closed doors, they would get rubber stamped by a judge. We introduce regular people to the process by convening a plea jury. The jury would consider the terms of each plea deal before the court and then decide whether it's fair. Members would hear the underlying facts along with the charges before deciding whether the punishment being proposed as a part of the plea deal fits with the crime of the defendants agreeing this knowingly and voluntarily. The jury would trust prosecutors and the plea jurors would give prosecutors an incentive to be more restrained in the charging decision. If you're always the person who deals with get rejected, your superiors are going to know knowing this is an all-seeing eye is going to reject your overcharging, motivate to you as a prosecutor to be more fair. Now on case turn ban fail bargaining will just go underground and instead against the surrogacy and magnifies legal abuse impacts. Winder 87. The study explained the ban among districts of the courts of El Paso. Most of the 10 cases except negotiated plea deals because of efficiency, implicit bargaining, continuing the inform sub rosa patterns in the plea bargaining was the role of an irresistible tendency to cooperate among the courtroom group. The plea bargaining is a permanent component of the American criminal process. Plea bargaining is carried on surreptitiously in the defendant's sentencing effect of the plea bargain depends on the fortuity of the case and not on the policy informed uniformly applied. The public remains uninformed in the activities of judges, prosecutors, and underwear vital part of criminal justice. One of the key actors and since frequently engaged in prohibited practice, policy from the pretext and the law loses its moral force. And second turn, eliminating plea bargaining would just make the situation worse for innocent defendants. Scott and Stunts 92. In order to accommodate the drafting increases in the trial process itself would have been truncated, altering the trial process in the way necessarily increases the error rate, meaning that the raises the rate at which innocent defendants are convicted. That alter prosecutors' incentives and makes making decisions about the case take to trial, make alter police incentives when making arrests. Police officers and prosecutors alike can afford to be less careful in creating their process. Prohibiting plea bargaining would raise the proportion of innocents who were convicted on crimes. And now onto the AC. More specifically, we showed you that you're going to that you're just going to allow for prosecutors to go underground, which is going to be worse when in terms of rights because individuals are not going to be able to like bring in the judge if like the prosecutor is trying to limit even more of the rights and take advantage of them. And then onto the second advantage, one he like basically concedes in cross. There's already the judges already have enough legitimacy to currently check fraud, and there's absolutely no break that he can say. He just says that there's a crack in the system, but not that the app is enough to that plea bargaining right now in the status quo is enough to put us over the edge because it already happens. And second, the counterplan is going to solve 100% of legitimacy, and actually it solves better than the AC because we're going to introduce the community into these police into the criminal justice system once again with plea juries, which they're going to ensure that these systems are like more fair. And then onto the bomb evidence. This has absolutely no brink because we always say that Trump presents an existential risk, but he already doesn't like listen to those around him, and we've seen that this has never led to like extinction. So do not. So that has very low probability. And then onto the Scholar card. And under his Scholar card talks about how that you should not look at like my evidence. He needs to specifically talk about why my evidence is bad, not just like a broad idea that like all neg cards are like somehow bad and biased. Now onto the second off, which is the court plug DA. Even a small reduction in the plea bargaining would dramatically overstretch court resources and increase possible convictions as against Johnny O2. Judges point their need to process a large number of cases with little more resources, and the greatest reason for plea bargaining reduction, 10% the number of defendants plea bargaining would require more than twice the amount of judicial manpower and resources. Case law would increase by prevent the exacting analysis of the facts obstacle to have to obtain facts and apply to innocent trials become less strict, thereby increase the probability that innocents be found guilty in planning plea bargaining in the Bronx. Significantly increase the length of trial, criminal proceedings, and cost of administrating the system. Con 97. The Bronx in the Bronx, the ban clogged the courts of pending cases mounted in the prior to ban's position. 51% of the Bronx total exceeded the 6 month statutory period in the speedy trial, and 1 year later, despite a drop in crime result of fewer indictments, the number of felony cases pending over 6 months had a rise in 60.5% of pending cases in 365, jumped from 18% to 30%, while the cases pending over 450 days exceeded 18%. Aging the cases, the dramatic pace effects on pretrial detention costs and average in custody for Bronx defendants increases over 160 days, with the average cost of the rest of the city decreased to 120 days. The number of defendants detained over the year increased in 47%. Overburdening public defenders catastrophic for indigent defense and extends pretrial detention exposed the cost of the system to participants and taxpayers' costs. Wrongful conviction sentencing errors prevents the effective re-entry of released offenders, restores public trust in the justice system. All disproportionately affects the poor and communities of color. Taylor 2011, where defenders cancels are very high, poor people will be accused of criminal offenses may spend a lot of time in jail before speaking to a lawyer. Period. And poor people spend more time in jail pre-time, more likely to receive a guilty sentence, less able to help with their defense, more likely to lose their job, to interrupt the education kept from the family, can lose custody of the children, more likely to be received a sentence in incarceration over probation, having representation, a bail hearing, or arrangement, keeping people out of jail, waiting trial. The public attorneys do not have enough time to handle all the cases they get. Time extension resulting in inefficient and costly system for those involved in taxpayers and defendants. Enough time to be effective, help secure accurate, appropriate sentences. Decreasing sentencing errors, a lack of advocacy can lead to unnecessary harsh sentences. Cut the hard sentences, and courts eliminated a constitutional rights to counter court clause turns case in outways because it narrows the scope of constitutional rights for everyone. Filed in 2011, the court has already trimmed down the scope of constitutional rights for the purpose of stemming undue flood of suits in the federal court. The court narrowed its interpretation of the constitutionally protected due process right in the period versus Taylor held that random and authorized deprivation of liberty not valued the due process clause. Court period back in the scope of the due process rights once more in Daniel versus Williams held that the negligent deprivation of liberty not violated the 14th Amendment of the court, having shrunk the scope of the due process guarantee that Paul Parrott and Daniels easy to imagine justice similarly circumcising of the rights of their regarded soul shall cause damaging auctions to be too high. He said that he's going to change the efficiency model, and then prosecutors are just going to take less cases, but you're going to look to what I've given you, like 3 different empirical examples in which people are just get their rights taken away and they're just trying to be more efficient. He can't just fiat that all of a sudden prosecutors one day are going to wake up and decide that they don't care about their conviction rates or how long they put people in jail and then just take less cases. So now let's go on to the next off, which is sexual assault decide. Plea bargaining allows sexual assault victims to avoid having to relive past trauma and sometimes ensure conviction where a trial would result in acquittal. New York Times 94. The substantial benefits deprived of plea bargaining better serve the community. Often crime victims do not have to be subject to the rigors of trial. They have to relive the presence of the accused, the detailed horrors of victimization, the rape, the abuses. Cases particularly accused is often treated as a witness, stating the accuser must have the great fortitude to endure the cross-examination. In such cases, acceptance of plea to a lesser crime to be mercy for the accuser. In some cases, the judge and lawyers know compelling evidence of guilt, but know that the jury has decided the case without such evidence because it's not improperly obtained under law. In those cases, a plea will ensure a conviction where trial may result in acquittal. And second, court or trials force sexual assault survivors to have to relive their trauma experiences. Worth 07 because trial experiences can be emotionally taxing. Victims prefer plea bargaining. The process of testing victims may have to relive rape or molestation numerous times. The victims have to relive the experiences explained to a group of strangers. The court process recapitulates the psychological manner of the original rape situation. Victims prefer living ready and mentally prepared for the trial. The victim must endure cross-examination. Often, causes a person to feel like she is on the one on trial. In a trial, whatever the verdict, the victim always loses in testifying part during trials. It causes intense emotional distress and psychological violence for survivors, particularly children. Weissenberg 82. Because of the way the legal system stretches, the child often experiences much stress and anxiety through the legal proceedings. Children may be expected to relate the details of sexual abuse. Many times repression and denial may cause difficulty remembering accurately the ideals of her soul. Law enforcement personnel often reacting to patient hostility, blame, or causing them additional emotional trauma. General anxiety about justifying the fear of seeing the alleged officer once in place, and additional sports experience nightmares and postponement of trial.
Ready?
Yeah.
Let's start on the counterplan. What does it do?
So currently, when the attorneys have to come before the judges to decide whether or not the individual should be indicted or the terms of a plea deal, it's just them and the judge. However, under this new system, we would institute a plea jury, which would we'd have people come and serve on this jury for 2 weeks. They would hear all the
so they're serving on a
parts
jury
of the
for
case.
2 weeks. What's the status of the counterplan?
What's the stat? Condo.
Okay. So they serve on a jury for 2 weeks hearing the plea agreements between those
various cases. And so they have to decide whether or not it's fair, if the defendant's giving too many of their rights. As part of getting the information of the trial at hand, the judge will also educate the jury on what people usually get for this certain type of crime and what.
Wait, but so the plea bargaining process ultimately happens behind closed doors. Under the counterplan, would the prosecuting defendant just come to the jury with the plea bargain and they would either approve or deny?
No, they have to discuss it.
They have to discuss it in front of the jury.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a couple questions then.
Sure.
One, how does this not link to either of the dissents that you read? If it's a 2-week proposal and you require sexual assault survivors to then go before a jury and talk about whether or not they should plead.
So first, I would say that maybe we link a little bit to court clog, but what we really do is what you say we need to do. We take the hands, we minimize prosecutorial power because they have to be held accountable, and second, we take us out of this efficiency mindset, right?
So
let's just get through all these cases,
Wait,
the amount of, like, in the quickest
so I
amount
have
of
a
time.
question about the counter plan.
Sure.
So I'm still a little bit confused. Does the jury approve the plea or not? Or
No, the jury decides whether or not the defendant can take a plea. The jury can say, yes, this is a fair plea, and the defendant can still say, oh, I don't want to take it, though.
Wait, so what if a defendant wants to take the plea?
The
Can
jury
the jury
would,
override it?
yes.
Okay. Let's go to the court clog decide.
Sure.
Do you read uniqueness that courts aren't clogged right now?
It's like a linear disad.
It's a linear disad. Okay. Let's go to the can evidence. It says that when the courts were clogged because of plea bargaining in the Bronx, it slowed down the judicial system.
Yeah.
But your turn on case said that it didn't. How do you reconcile the contradiction between these two pieces of evidence?
What do you mean?
So in your court clog decide, you said that going to trial slows down the system, but then you read a turn on case that says that plea bargaining wouldn't do anything to slow down the prosecutorial system.
No, I didn't say that. I just said that individuals will still have like backroom deals, right? The same things that you say. So not like every single individual is going to like continue to engage in plea bargaining behind the scenes, but we say like a good enough amount to mean that you don't have solvency, and even if you like do have solvency, the courts will be clogged.
counter plan. The two decides in order. Are you good?
No.
Oh wait, I forgot one card for you in the speech doc, sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, sent it. Tell me when you're good.
I will.
You. What?
Okay.
Are you okay? Plea bargaining is resurrected mass incarceration. One, efficiency mindset. Attorneys get through exponentially more cases since they never have to go to trial, resulting in more arrest charges and convictions. Second, rights violations. Defendants are coerced into relieving the rights to things like DNA testing, things like due process, trial by jury, and counsel, which lowers the burden of proof of their guilt, resulting in incarceration. Third, sentence stacking. Prosecutors charge people for more crimes to consider them into plea deals, which substantially increases prison time. The prison criminal complex is awful. Fuel cycles of violence, suppression, economic hardship, and premature death outweighs all of their impacts. Now on their two case turns, group them for both circumvention arguments. Don't buy their circumvention claims. The AZ plan is unique by using the Supreme Court, which other presidents have not asked for their evidence after the round. All of it is based on localized state courts, which have more corruption, but prosecutors are more likely or unlikely to defy the Supreme Court. Also, abolishment is feasible. No circumventing. Shuffer. 84. Philadelphia supports the feasibility of total abolition. Philadelphia prosecutors complied with preventing plea bargaining in all cases. Philadelphia indicts successful abolition of plea bargaining, and the plea bargaining are achievable. Also, on their scrapped evidence that is you can't violate due process rights, which are fundamental to the Constitution, which means they wouldn't be able to shorten trials legally, and the courts would be sued for corruption under the 1AC, which means it doesn't link. Now the counterplan, first permutation do both solves best and ensures that we get the most accountability. Also links to both decides. It slows the courts down since it requires trials by jury, which links to court clock. It also requires sexual assault victims to testify within court, but it also doesn't resolve the F because it doesn't grant recipients due process rights which they deserve. For example, things like a trial by jury and discovery, which are not included within the counterplan. It also doesn't dissolve the efficiency mindset of the criminal justice system since it doesn't require prosecutors to screen any more or less because they don't have to fear whether or not their record takes a hit as a conviction, because not complying with the plea bargain doesn't result as a case loss, which means that they're still able to get through exponentially more cases and doesn't resolve the inefficiency mindset of the CGS. Also, deals are done behind back doors and prosecutors are able to intimidate them as a whole, which jurors aren't always aware of, and not all of the bargaining is done in front of them, and there's back doors loopholes which they can get through, which the counterplan doesn't resolve for. Now the court clock decide. The F internal link turns to decide. Plea bargaining allows for courts to go through an insane amount of cases, which tramples rights, sustains mass incarceration. If they didn't have plea bargaining, the more prosecutors would have to have a new system, not continue to push unreasonable cases. And the F streamlines the CGS, where prosecutors only take the best cases, which saves their time and money. I'll share 83. The bargaining process led to substantial expenditure of resources. Plea bargaining has led attorneys to file absurd motions. Pleading takes time to resolve and helps secure better plea bargaining. Less prosecutors inflate the charges, so the defense refused trial, and lengthy defendants deployed their acceptance and shortly before their cases were scheduled. This led to the frequency in cases negotiations may be prolonged by banter and psychological plays that consume substantial resources, and a process of masterpiece of efficiency. Alaska's plea agreement and prohibition, substantial decrease in the time in filing a disposition, disrupting and tripling, quadrupling the resources. Now devolved by 1, 2, or 3 additional judges. This sort of investment requires not expanding, inspire panic. Skip the next card. Also, it doesn't turn the case, and we outweigh. We would crash the entire judicial system by too many cases, which means that people wouldn't be able to held up in detention for things like bail, because it's substantially increasing the amount of trials would cause a culture change within the CJS, which resolves their impact. Also, no, their dissent's not unique. Court clock now immigration 600K backlog. Ball 17 immigration arrests have increased the number of cases that clog the court show. Deportation section has called immigration justice to increase productivity, addressing a backlog of more than 600,000 cases. B, opioids, addiction ripples families apart, and court clogs and justice system, which means all of their impacts are non-unique and not linear, because the same people who are detained now will be detained in the world of the affirmative. Now on the sexual violence counterplan, one, they don't read uniqueness. Rape culture is prevalent right now, and their impacts are non-unique. Also, plea bargaining trivializes sexual violence, since offenders will plead to a lesser charge, which skews statistics and perpetuates rape culture. Snealer, 11, plea bargaining raises challenge prosecutors do not take seriously. The charges do not clip symbol, like states against sexual violence victims, have the chance of injury, socially acknowledged. Plea bargaining can distort the historical record and scale and scope of violence. Also, conditionality is a voting issue. Multiple unreciprocal routes to the ballot screws over time crunch 1A. Ours, it means they can collapse to the one layer and have a massive time advantage, which is the reason you should reject the argument, since sticking with the counterplan doesn't solve, since it's skewed my ability to answer in the first place. Also, courts have massive measures in place to make testifying more pleasant. Secular 11 courts have adopted wide range of measures ensuring victims' confidentiality, privacy, victim support measures, and identity of the victim, removing information from courts while regardless currently rather than identified through electronic methods, excluding the public. Cut the card at public. And then I didn't read the second card on court club.
Okay. 231. Your first argument was that it's non-unique on the sexual assault?
On sexual assault.
Why is it non-unique?
Rape culture is very prevalent in society right now. People get Jameis Winston.
And you just went for advantage 1?
Yeah.
So the order is going to be the counter plan, and on the counter plan I'm going to address the multiple condo theory. And then it's going to go AC, sexual assault to SAD, and then court clog. Okay, everyone ready?
Yeah. Are you sending anything?
I said no news this time. Okay, everyone ready? First, extend the counter plan that we're going to institute a system of plea juries, which is going to look over plea bargains through the public, and they're going to decide whether they're fair or not, and if the defendant is giving up too many rights. He says perm do both. This literally makes no sense. You cannot have a plea jury system if there are no plea bargains to be heard in the first place, which he completely abolishes. He says that I still link to both. I still link to both decides. First, I just slowed down the court a little bit here. He says it's already slowed down. We just institute another state to take this out of the efficiency mindset, which under his mind is good. We are not right now. Plea bargains have to do with 97% of the system. He would completely crash the system in that he would completely lead to people being panicked in that they would have to come up with other ways to address that, and which we just slow it down a little bit. Second, he says that we link to the sexual assault dissent. First, I'm not going to go for that, but either way, we do not link to this because they can still take people can still take plea bargains, which means that they do not have to go to trial, and they do not have to relive their experiences. Then on to the multiple condo shell. I just read one conditional counterplan. This is not multiple condo. I don't even violate the shell, so don't drop. So don't evaluate it. And second, holds him to what he said. He didn't write anything down, but we most definitely heard him say the words multiple condo when I was giving my order of speeches. I said I'm going to the multiple condo shell, and he said okay, so that means don't vote there, and he didn't give any voters. So now let's go into the AC. So the AC, he says that he solves in two ways. First is because he changes the efficiency mindset, and second, because when we clog the court, this means that prosecutors will have to decide to take less cases because they just do not have the time and day. First, on the mindset, nowhere does he show how he actually changes this mindset. We're just going to look to other ways. You can cross-apply the Fallon card from the court clog dissent, which gives you 3 Supreme Court justice cases in which we have scaled back due process rights, literally just so that our courts would be less clogged and so prosecutors could get through all this. This is going to show you that specifically that we're not changing the mindset. Second, the idea that so now onto the court clog, he means that this is just going to lead to them being forced to select to take fewer cases, but you're going to cross-apply the Winger 87 card, which says that the prosecutors who are extremely horrible, which he talks about how they're already doing backdoor deals, they're just going to continue to do that. We say this is worse for the protection of rights, which he says comes first in this round, because if you are doing this illegally and there's nothing written down, that it's easier for them to go back on their deal or and screw the defendants completely, except in the world of the counterplanned plea juries would hold this completely accountable. And second, you're going to extend the Scott and Stunts cards. He doesn't his responses make no sense. I said that you make it worse for innocent defendants because when innocent defendants have to go through a trial, they do not have their public defenders are already had too many cases, so they don't have the time and resources to allocate to that, but they do have enough time and sources to allocate to coming up with a pretty good plea deal. This means that you're just going to exacerbate the disparity between minorities and those who are wealthy enough to have good lawyers, and thus harming the rights of minorities even more, which means that the AC is actually going to be worse for prosecutorial discretion because it does not change the culture, and second, it's going to be worse for rights, which he says comes first. Now we can go into sexual assault dissent. You can extend that. It's non-unique right now because we already have rape culture, which means that his link turn no longer makes sense because this is just going to happen in the Afro-Neg world. But now we can go into the court clog dissent. So first, on the first response, he continues. We're going to look at the comparison. He reads these cards he reads these Ulster cards, which are completely hypothetical. I'm thinking that prosecutors might decide to pull this back. He reads the Philadelphia card, which says that all prosecutors in Philadelphia were sure, we're not going to take plea bargains. These are going to be really bad examples because they are not the norm. We have seen that 3 times. You can extend the Fallon card. That empirically we've just scaled back rights, which means that you're not going to actually solve for the prosecutorial culture because we're once again going to circumvent it, which means that we're always going to go back around to solve this efficiency standard of this. Then you're going to extend the Kahn and the Taylor card, which means that you completely screw over minorities once again because you increase the length of the trial because prosecutors are just going to continue. Even if you win, the prosecutors are only going to take a little less cases. These cases are going to go in longer trials, which means that people are going to stay in pre-trial detention more. And Taylor shows how this being in pre-trial detention more leads to an increase in mass incarceration. It destroys communities because individuals cannot go back to work, they can't take care of their children, and so they lose all these opportunities, which means that you're going to be worse for those people in those lives. So let's break it down. So what we have now is the world of the AC and the world of the counterplan, because I went for it. I say the counterplan solves entirely of the mindset because we have a group of jurors who are going to be looking at the prosecutors the entire time to make sure that they are not trying to take rights away from defendants, and we're going to have the judge there instead of right now, which he already says that people are going behind the back and how he would just increase that with the Winger. That means that we're the only one who actually solves the prosecutorial culture because they are held accountable. He says it doesn't matter if they don't take the plea deal, it doesn't look poorly on them, but you're going to read specifically the NIFARC card at the end of the card talks about that if they keep getting deals that are not taken, then the people in the higher up are going to keep take notice and say why do you keep giving people bad plea deals? You need to change it. Read the card. It literally says that. Then he says the second, which means it's going to do that. On the matter of court clog, we say that we slow down courts enough so that we take it out of the efficiency standard, but we do not slow them down so much and that we link to the horrible impacts of the court clog. Even if he says that even if he says that like court clog is a good thing, we're going to show you that you're never going to be able to solve for the underlying prosecutorial culture without plea juries, because he can't just like fiat that people all of them a sudden are going to decide to take fewer cases, because we show you the Fallon card in which courts are always going to have the backs of the backs of the prosecutors so that they can get through more of their caseload. So vote neg.
Okay.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah. Is everyone good?
Mm-hmm.
The order will be an overview, then the case, then the court clock decide. Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Mia's really messed up this round. She's conceded a straight turn on the sexual assault decide. You conceded uniqueness that rape culture is high right now. People like Jameis Winston getting away with sexual assault and violence and mass portrayals in the media or within the NFLs are examples of it right now. Banning plea bargaining is key to reduce it. The reason sexual assault occurs right now is because no one is ever convicted for it because they're never taken to trial since they plead down to lower deals, which is occurring in the status quo. Survivors never take their perpetrators to court and they always negotiate pleas, but this skews statistics and makes it seem like rape is not a part of society. Only allowing them to go to trial and having their voice heard in court can solve the 1AC. The counterplan doesn't resolve it since it doesn't have people go to trial or go to court. Sexual assault outweighs their impacts given that there's mitigation on both sides, and both the app and counterplan functionally do the exact same thing, which means that this is the unique impact we're winning. It also encourages the culture of masculinity and violence that promotes things like genocide and war. The reason that Trump is so aggressive and the reason why we're so patriarchal is because of things like sexual assault in the status quo, which outweighs any of your impacts on magnitude and is an independent reason to vote for us. It's uncontested. We just need to win some piece of defense to any of the rest of the case. Now, AC solvency, extend the efficiency mindset of the criminal justice system. Prosecutors are able to get through essentially more cases since they don't have to worry about how successful they are because plea bargaining doesn't affect their conviction record or rate. If anything, it only makes it positive. You can see that the counterplan doesn't resolve this because prosecutors would just keep going to courts and still be as efficient because they don't have to screen properly for cases since it doesn't go as a loss on their record if they lose in the jury or lose in the plea bargaining process. So it doesn't resolve the 1AC, it results in mass incarceration and horrible things. You've also conceded that you don't solve rights waivers. People under the world of the counterplan are not granted due process rights to things like trial by jury, things like discovery and full examination of the evidence is not given under the world of the counterplan. They are just review of plea agreements. You've conceded rights violations result in rampant totalitarianism and the rise of Trump, which outweigh your impacts on magnitude since it causes literal genocide and nuclear war. Now the counterplan, you do not solve. I've isolated two solvency deficits, which you have not answered. You say circumvention. You've conceded our analytic, which is that SCOTUS rulings are not circumvented, even if the state's incidents are bad and are worked around. That is unique because those courts are more corrupt and less legitimate. The Supreme Court is the highest national court of the United States, so they wouldn't be able to work around. You've also competed in empirical evidence from Philadelphia, which said that it's feasible, which means at best this is just mitigatory defense, but most likelihood is that the 1AC will work, and the counterplan does not resolve rights violations or the right to due process or the efficiency mindset. Now, either they're in a double bind, you grant the counterplan AC solvency and it links to the disad, or you don't, and the alpha impacts outweigh because incarceration sustains mass amounts of violence. Now, the disad finally, you've conceded that it is non-unique. People will sit in prisons regardless. There are already maximum amounts of immigration cases. There are already people who are pleading guilty and will just be incarcerated under the current CGS. The law is able to target whoever it wants. Only the 1AC has a risk of crashing the system, which means it's try or die for the for the app, and the counterplan doesn't solve all their arguments against collapse prove our radicalism argument, which is that that we resolve mass amounts of violence and incarceration and streamline the CJS.
Good debate.